right, here we go. Alrighty, so let's begin. So these first slides are going to look very familiar. I already did a video on this, just gonna quickly go through this. So these are just exam clarifications. All right, so main thing is that our exam has moved from the 13th to the 20th. So that's about 27 days from today at 2 p.m. So it's at that time. You're taking it at home, obviously. We're not going back to school for the rest of the school year, unfortunately. And then it's best to take it on a computer or tablet. And at this point, I think everyone in the class has access to a computer or tablet. You all are registered for the AP exam already. So just make sure that you look at that email from College Board and that email from Ms. Almagro to clarify that change in that exam and that you're going to be taking that exam. All right, so you can just look through these on your own time. I already went through this. Just for any more updates, welcome to go to the College Board website. They have a whole site just dedicated to updates with the coronavirus. If you have extended time, it's already taken care of. Makeup exams, I know a lot of people might have tech issues or some sort of issue that day. There is a makeup exam Friday, June 5th. And then the exam content, oh, I think someone's trying to join. Okay.
You gotta help me figure out this.
Trying to get Deja in.
I got a D. If I pass my class.
Okay. Exam content. So the exam's going to be one essay question, and it's going to be the rhetorical analysis essay. So that's all what we've been working for post spring break. So it's going to be about 50 minutes, so 45 minutes to write the exam, 5 minutes to submit it. Open book and open notes, so that's super important. So make sure you're either printing out those, saving them to your computer, all those notes. So what we go through today, the slides, I'm going to post them today. I've already posted them in Google Classroom. Any worksheets, I posted tone words, I posted transition words, all those things should be in your essay. You also are able to use grammar and spell check, so feel free to use those as well. Very important. Okay, you can look at these on your own time. I already went over these. I already posted a couple videos from AP YouTube for homework this week, so you can check out more. I'm going to be adding more to your classwork for next week. Alrighty, so just want to go over the majority of what this video is going to be about, how to write a rhetorical analysis essay. I've already posted this within Google Classroom, so just make sure that, so this should look familiar, and just make sure that you're following along. Alrighty, so how to write a rhetorical analysis essay. Exactly what I'm going over today, I've gone over in class, so this is just a review. All right, so soaps. So I'm going to go speaking specifically to the speech that we're doing in class this week, weeks before. All right, so quickly the soaps. This should be a review for everyone else. The speaker was JFK. The occasion was April 11th, 1962. It was at a news conference, and the U.S. was emerging following a recession, and steel prices were increased by 3.5%. The audience was the American people, specifically at points steel executives to lower their prices. So that's the purpose. To call attention to the lack of responsibility by steel companies who continue to raise their prices. And then the subject, the hike in steel prices by steel companies. I just went over that quickly, but are there any questions so far? So the soap should have been easy. Most people got this on their homework, correct? All right, so I'm going to move on from here. So I'm going to be, all right, so yesterday afternoon, evening, I posted a couple of interesting, current, topical articles that I wanted you to read over. How many of you had a chance to read over those? You can unmute yourself, say I did, so I can kind of gauge. If not, we can spend a couple minutes just going over that.
I read one of them.
Read one of them? I only actually read one. So let's do this. How many of us are in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13, and I have 3 main ones, so let's see. I'm still not very good at math. 13 divided by 3. All right, so it's about 4 people per essay per article. All right, so in the chat, let's see if I can do this. In the chat, I'm going to post the first article. Bear with me. Okay. In the chat, if you don't have the first article up, does everyone see where the chat is? I'm posting the websites for each article. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So if you haven't already, let's spend about 5 minutes going through these articles, reading through them. Let's give you 7 minutes to read through these articles. If you already read one, want to read a different one, and then keep in mind these 3 questions that I'm going to be going back to. So 3 questions are the same for each of the articles. What is the message the writer is trying to get across? What rhetorical strategies does the writer use? And how does this article relate to JFK's speech, or does it? Is there a similar type of message? Is his message from the 60s completely different from us in the 2020s? Or is there some sort of relation between the two? So let's take about 7 minutes. Does everyone see these articles in the chat? If not, you can go through Google Classroom, check out those 4 articles, and then we will come back in 7 minutes. So feel free to, if you're on video, feel free to come off video and start to just review those articles again, keeping in relation those 3 questions. Does that make sense to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are on mute. Okay, sounds good. All right, so it is 10:14. Let's do 10:20. 10:20. So I'm gonna go off video too, so I can review these as well. All right, so you don't see me concentrating. So, okay. So 10:20. Alrighty, so I just want to turn back whole group right now. So I have been, give everyone a couple more seconds to come back in. Hopefully you were able to read one, maybe two, and start to think about these three questions that I'm going to go through. I'm going to focus on three. I gave you four, but three of them really honed in on what I was trying to get on. So hopefully by this time everyone is returning, and then we're able to start. So I'm going to start to turn it over to you guys a little bit more. So make sure that you know how to unmute yourselves when you're trying to talk, so we can hear you. So we'll start with the first article. This was the New York Times article. Okay, it'll let me get there. Here we go. If you didn't know already, you do have full access to New York Times for free. Usually if you don't have an account, you can only see, I want to say, 3 articles at once. But because you are a student with Miami-Dade, you do have free access to this. So if you haven't made an account with them, definitely try to do that. But to start, so the 3 questions that I'm going to be asking. So we'll start with the first question. So what is the message the writer is trying to get across in this specific article? So the imperative of personal sacrifice today and during World War II. So make sure to put yourself off mute, and anyone can take off. What is the message?
Okay, so Acosta, I didn't read the New York Times one. I read the Atlantic one.
All right, we're gonna go in order. So for anyone who's read this one, did anyone read this one? This was the first one.
I did.
Okay, who is this? Sorry,
Shania.
Oh, hello, Shania. All right, so what was the message of this first article?
What I got from like the beginning is basically that the same way there were different sacrifices people had to take during World War, it's the same way that we're taking different sacrifices today.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying we're taking different ones or very similar ones?
Well, they're similar because some are more dangerous than others, just as now some sacrifices are more dangerous than others.
Okay, does anyone else want to add on to that? Agree with that? Anything else we want to add? It was the first one, so I'm assuming a lot of us looked at this one, or maybe not. Okay, moving on to the second question. So I'm going to go to the slide. We'll talk about the slide more, but did you see any rhetorical devices? If I say rhetorical devices, rhetorical strategies, I mean the same thing. Any rhetorical devices or strategies that really honed in on you? Shania? Sorry, I put you on the spot, but I think you're the only one that read that one.
Anaphora?
Anaphora?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, you saw repetition. What else? Did you see any ethos, pathos, or logos?
I think.
Well, kind of like, yeah.
What was that?
Maybe ethos.
Definitely there was ethos. There was some sort of credibility with what they were talking about. They were in there was some sort of like call and response aspect to it as well, with the questions and then answer. So ethos. So you the person answering or even the person asking had some sort of ethos for answering and answering and asking. Good. Pathos, making us feel something. Logos, yeah, statistics, anecdotes, for sure. Anything else? I think that's about good for the first one.
Oh, never mind.
No, I'm listening.
Did they have imagery? I think. I don't know.
Do you want to point out a specific area in which you think it was imagery?
I don't know, when they went back to the 1940s.
Oh, I see what you mean. So, imagery is more goes into the concept of figurative language. So imagery would more, it would make. I see what you're trying to get at, but that was more. It's more of an anecdote or alluding to the 1940s, but parallelism. Yeah. So that parallelism is very similar to anaphora. So when we go through these definitions, parallelism is more about grammar and structure of the sentence. So just like anaphora, it has a repetition of the same phrases of words within a couple of sentences. Parallelism is very similar. You can use anaphora as an example of parallelism. The parallelism is not an example of anaphora. So what I mean by that is So anaphora is the repetition of a consecutive phrase at in the beginning of a sentence. Parallelism can be anywhere within a sentence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So parallelism is a type of anaphora. So say on test day you forget about anaphora, you can use parallelism for any sort of repetition of the same unit phrase of words anywhere within a sentence. Anaphora would just be at the beginning, that repetition of the same phrase. We'll go through these as we get to the strategies, but I want to go through these articles just a little bit more. All right, so we got the message. Thank you, Shania, for that. We had some rhetorical strategies. Shania, and who else was helping me out? I can't really see anyone's
Ashley.
faces. Oh, Ashley, thank you. And then how does this article, or does it relate to JFK's speech? So thinking back to these soaps, how may it relate, or does it relate? Anyone who read this first article?
I guess the
Oh,
audience is the same.
So the American people, yeah, so they're still talking to the American people. Okay, I like that. I can take that. What else? Is there, looking at the sense of purpose, is there a similar sense of purpose that you can put together?
Yes,
no?
because the more call to attention.
Mm-hmm. So what the call to attention in JFK's was the steel execs for hiking up prices, and then
And lack of responsibility.
Lack of responsibility. Mm-hmm. So, and this article, they're talking about how, especially talking about young people, not taking that lack of responsibility for staying in, social distancing, and everything we need to do now, as opposed to what was happening in World War II when young people are going into war right after Pearl Harbor. So just how this was very sudden. I feel like just 1 second ago we were back in class. Pearl Harbor happened and people are off to war, World War II. Make sense? Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next one. So my computer's covering this title. Why America is uniquely unsuited to dealing with the coronavirus. So that was the, I want to say that was the Atlantic one. Yes, so the Atlantic. Who read this one? So we have the same 3 questions that I want to go over again. So what is the message the writer is trying to get across to the audience? So now on the Atlantic one.
I read that one.
I read that one too.
All right, so just make sure everyone's just talking at once, but feel free to unmute yourselves and begin. So what is the message of the Atlantic article?
Well, the article, or I should say the author of the article was trying to get the point across that that the Donald Trump administration was late trying to, I guess, trying to fix the corona outbreak problem, and like the author used a lot of, like, I guess, an anaphora or comparison with other countries, and like basically saying that the United States was so used to fighting wars away from the United States, away from their own
Turf, maybe.
turf, yeah, their own land. And so now that the coronavirus is in our land, now it was kind of like late for them to have a reaction.
So you, yeah, exactly. So usually when you think of time of war, times of hardship, it is somewhere else. It's on the news and it's topical, but it's not in our own home front, our own land. So good point. Yeah. So that message of it being on our own homeland. Anything else we want to add? Seems like a couple people read this article.
Another thing was that because we never had like to really deal with a big outbreak like Zika or SARS or anything, we weren't really prepared, whereas other countries had, like the article said, a scar, so they knew it happened before and they had already prepared for it not to happen again, so they were more ready than we were because it never.
Exactly. I mean, I can say I fall into this category as well. So we heard about Zika. Zika was in America, but it wasn't to this extent. We heard about SARS, swine flu even, but it wasn't ever to this extent. So no, especially countries in Asian countries were more suited. They had more government efficiencies, more programs together for when this happened. So yes, we were definitely unprepared, to say the least. Anything else we want to add? All right, so we can move on to the next question. So we're gonna do the same questions for each. So rhetorical strategies. I'm gonna pull up that slide again so you can pull through these. So any rhetorical strategies? I think, Nicole, you were talking about some strategies you found?
Yeah. Analogy, right? That's when you compare.
Yep, analogy is a comparison.
Okay, so yeah, so he compared South Korea and the United States. They both had the virus on the same day, but South Korea was quicker to do preventative methods.
So exactly, I mean, the whole article is an article of an analogy of the U.S. compared to other countries who are going about this virus differently, especially South Korea. If you've been watching the news or you just saw something between all the, I mean, it pops up anywhere on social media or wherever you are, ways that South Korea has been going through this. But also you have to put in comparison that yes, what he was talking about, how we were uniquely unsuited. We, unlike Asian countries, a lot of Asian countries were didn't have the programs in place because something like this hasn't happened. SARS did not take over or become such a big epidemic in the U.S. as it was in Asian countries about a decade ago. You might not even have remembered it too much because, again, it didn't impede our lives like coronaviruses. And then lastly, how would that message relate to JFK's message? Does it not? Is there some sort of commonalities?
The article talks about being prepared, and it kind of like, I guess, speaks about the future with the coronavirus problem. So, and then in the article with JFK, he also talks about how if nothing was to happen with the steel prices, then the future would be much more different.
Yeah, much more grim for most Americans. Exactly. And talking about that idea of home turf, national sacrifice, that envelope of national sacrifice. National sacrifice is very different when something's happening overseas as opposed to something happening on our own turf. Us having to social distance and everything else that goes along with that as well. Those sacrifices that go along with social distancing. So yeah, so that idea of home turf sacrifice would be something that you can correlate. Anything else?
It's like it's saying, because the Atlantic article is saying, because we didn't prepare earlier, a domino effect of things happened. And in the JFK article it said, if we don't stop this, a domino effect of things is going to happen.
Exactly. I like that part too. Yep. So that domino effect as well. If we don't social distance in this case, then more people are going to get sick. If more people get sick, more people are going to be in the hospital. Less beds will be in the hospital, and more people will unfortunately pass away from that. So yes, and then in his case as well, if less people, if the steel executives don't decrease their prices, the economy will go down. If the economy will go down, people lose their jobs and so on and so forth. So yeah, so that domino effect. Really good job. Anything else we want to add?
Yes, that's everything, child.
Good. All right. So is that one more thing you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. I think someone else is trying to join. Oh, I think Julia might have got kicked out. Okay. And then the third article, last article we're going to go over, is the coronavirus pandemic sparks feelings of wartime sacrifice among many Americans. All right. So this article
I read this
the Fox News. All right, you heard this one? So we already get the hang of this. So we'll start with the first one. So what is the message the writer is trying to get across to the audience? The audience in this case being us. You.
That's a normal checkings account. It's to guarantee that you have money in.
Do we have someone who wants to volunteer? What is the message the writer is trying to get across? Make sure you have your on mute if you're not volunteering to speak.
So basically, the author was trying to make a direct connection with the pandemic to World War II. It was comparing like the sacrifices, like for example, like unemployment, just like the soldiers had to go into war, as well as like the fear of the coronavirus compared to like the fear of nuclear bombs.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else we want to add to that? That kind of correlates to that first article too, that idea of World War II. Anything else? Good job. Who was that? Was that Deja?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay. Anyone else read this article? The last article. All right, Deja, I'm gonna put you on the spot then. Strategies. What strategies did the article use? So go to the strategy slide. Any strategies?
There's a lot of statistics.
A lot of statistics. And what are statistics an example of? Of ethos, pathos, or logos?
Logos.
So statistics always help you. Also an example of ethos too. The statistics specifically are an example of logos, and then the author using it, the writer using it, is an example of ethos. Statistics always help you help in your argument. Anything else?
There's also a lot of like quotes from different people.
So what would that add to?
Would that be ethos, or is ethos like only from like the main author?
So it would be the author trying to establish his or her own credibility. So citing people who are credible would add to his own credibility. Does that make sense? So ethos is the author trying to establish credibility. They can do that by statistics. They can do that by bringing in other well-known, other educated people on the topic. So yeah, that would be an example of ethos. Anything else? Okay, so I hope those 3 articles were pretty informative, pretty interesting, got you thinking about what's happening in the world. Pretty hard not to hard to escape any of the news right now, but I tried to just pick some articles that were topical to what we were reading, topical to the day, current events, and then just get thinking about what's happening in the world. So any questions on that before we move on? So I'm going to continue on to people had some questions about these. I posted this slide on Google Classroom this week, so on Monday, but just want to go over it in my own words and just see if you have any questions. So from here to the end is going to be just the format of how you should write this essay. So remember, the only essay question, the only question on the exam is the rhetorical analysis essay. So this, if you follow this format to a T, or similarly, at least very, very similarly, you should be getting a decent score on this exam at least. So if you pass this exam, remember you have 3 college credits. So maybe if you don't want to take an English class ever again, you don't have to. Maybe if you want to take a different English class, you won't have to take this class. So definitely try to have this memorized. Again, it's open book, so you don't have to have it completely memorized. So that's great. But for the sake of time, remember you only have 45 minutes. Trying to reteach yourself this in that 45-minute span will definitely hinder you in the end. So let's begin. A lot of this will probably be a review for most people. So step number 1, you're going to read the prompt. So the example from here, down here, this is the prompt we were doing with JFK's speech. The prompt is at the very top. It's important to read for that necessary background. So that's where you start to build that information for SOAPs. So take inventory of the speaker, the occasion, the purpose, the audience, the subject of the text. So in this case, this is what you're looking for. This is what we've been doing. So first part, read the text. That should not take very long. Take inventory. Don't necessarily need to write it down, but just take inventory in your head. Next, very important, actively read the text. So remember, you only have 45 minutes. So to read this text twice is, for the most part, not doable. So actively read the text for the first time. Read it once, but actively, even slowly read it. So due to the exam's time restraint, which is 45 minutes, 5 minutes to submit it, you will need to actively read the text. So that means that you need to implement strategies. So ask yourself pre-reading questions. Bracket the main idea or thesis of the reading, make marginal notes, highlight, and then that concept of skimming. So skimming, I posted a YouTube video. Welcome to watch it on your own time. He goes over how to skim read, because skimming reading, you need to be able to skim read with the concept of comprehension also happening, not just reading to get to the end, because then once you finish, you're going to have to read it again, and then that time to write the essay is going to be lost. So make sure you're using these strategies. You are allowed to print out this exam essay, even though it's going to be on the computer. You're also allowed to print it out. So if you want to highlight it, make your paper look like this, that would be awesome. So if you want to do that, also, you guys probably know better than me, but if you know how to download it and maybe put it on Google Doc and actively read the text through the computer, you're able to do that as well. Does that make sense? You can print it, or you can put it on another doc and then highlight it through there, or whatever you want to do. These are just some more strategies. So some idea of questioning, connecting, predicting, visualizing, evaluating, reviewing. We've talked about it in my class. I'm sure you've talked about it in your other English classes before as well. So actively read the text. You should be aiming to read the text once, but with comprehension. So usually you read the text once and then you do a second read. We don't have time for that. So one read. So your first thing is you're reading the prompt. Next, you're reading the excerpt of whatever it is. Many times it's a speech, but sometimes it's a letter, or some sort of small writing. Third, we haven't talked about this too much, but I think this is a really quick way of getting 3 rhetorical devices. So separate the beginning, middle, and end. So it should look like this. So for your essay, I separated the beginning, put a line through it, the middle, and then the end. So differentiate between the middle, beginning, middle, and end. You can either do this physically, like I was doing this, or just in your head, saying this is the beginning part of his or her speech, the middle part of his or her speech, and the end. After you're done with that, decipher from those 3 categories. Decipher 1 rhetorical strategy from the beginning, 1 rhetorical strategy from the middle, and 1 rhetorical strategy from the end. So you'll have 3 rhetorical strategies, 3 body paragraphs in the end. This will help your essay flow better and making sure that you're hitting all parts of the essay. So pick 1 from the beginning, 1 from the middle, 1 from the end. So I want to say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then ethos, pathos, logos. So about 12 distinct strategies to choose from. There's more than this, but for the most part, on every essay they've ever given, 1 of these, well, 3 of these will be on it. So you can always choose from 1 of these. So if you have these memorized and know how they work within writing, you don't have to memorize any more rhetorical strategies than these. A lot of these you already know. In conversation, you guys have already brought up a lot of these. I gave you the definitions on slide 24 and 25. So go through these, but I'm going to go through them very quickly. So that the idea of analogy, comparison, anaphora, so the repetition of phrases, words or phrases in beginning of clauses. Anecdote, so that's some sort of personal story. Antithesis, so not antithesis, antithesis, so that's that comparing opposites, that idea of opposites. Oh, sorry, yes, sorry.
Yes. Did you send this PowerPoint already?
Yes, I sent it on Monday, but I can put it back in again. Okay. Yeah, okay. I already sent this. So when you were writing your essays this week, I gave it to you. So I'm just trying to go over it very quickly. That idea of figurative language is an umbrella term. If you can't remember metaphor or symbolism. You can just use the idea of figurative language, and imagery as well. Irony, metaphor, parallelism. Like rhetorical question is a really easy one to find. If there's a question, usually question mark in the writing, it usually is a rhetorical question. And then that's an easy one to spot. So if in the middle of it, there's a question mark in one of the sentences, easy device to spot, easiest to spot, I would say. Rhetorical question, question mark. Satire and symbolism. And then when in doubt, if you cannot remember any of these on test day, pick an example of ethos, an example of pathos, and an example of logos. Within the beginning, one in the middle, one in the end. Does that make sense? Yes? Thumbs up?
Yes.
Yeah, I see a lot of people. I do have a note at the end as well. If you do not have enough time to write 3, so you don't have enough time to pick one from the beginning, one from the middle, one from the end, just pick 2. So ideally, you would have 3 body paragraphs, but for time's sake, for some reason, maybe you needed to read the article twice or the writing twice, 2 body paragraphs. So pick one from maybe the beginning, in the middle, or the end, somewhere separated, somewhere mixed around the text. So don't pick 2 from the beginning at that point. Alrighty, so I have the definitions for everything. I suggest maybe putting it on index cards or whatever you have, memorizing these. Again, it is open text, open notes, open book, but trying to go through these on test day is just going to waste time. So you should have these memorized. Alrighty, and now you've seen these already as well. Make this actually bigger. You've seen these already as well, but I want to go over this. So the intro paragraph, your rhetorical preces, you did those 2 weeks ago now. I've used this example before, but this should also be memorized as well. Again, have this printed or type it or write it in your notebook. For me, when I write things down, it's easier for me to memorize. If that's for you as well, feel free to do that. Maybe you're more visual. You just need to look at it. You just need to memorize it in your head. Whatever it is. Although the text, although the essay, the exam is open book, definitely try to memorize as much as possible for time's sake. So you can use your brain, your time for writing as well as you can, not just trying to remember the format. All right, so quickly going over rhetorical preces. Let's see the time. They might kick us out soon. All right, so name of the first sentence is going to be just a quick recap of what's happening in the text. So the name of the author, many times you won't have a genre, so just skip over that part. Title of the work. Many times in this case, there's no title for the work, there's just the speech. The speech doesn't have a title, so skip over that. Date in parentheses. Then followed by, can't see it with everyone, followed by your accurate verb. So he, she, asserts, argues, implies. What's the purpose? What's the main proclamation of this text? Why is he or she saying this, writing this? Next, an explanation of how the author develops or supports the theses. So usually in chronological order. So your first sentence is just going to be a recap of what the text is about. Your second sentence is going to be a little peek at what your body paragraphs are going to be about. So I know that this essay is going to talk about the idea of repetition. This essay is eventually going to talk about the idea of drastic sentence lengths. And then this essay is going to talk about the rhetorical strategy antimetable. We don't have to worry about that right now. Just focus on the ones I gave you, but this is another example of a rhetorical device. So your first sentence is essentially who's saying the speech, what the speech is called, when the speech happened, and what the speech is about. Your second sentence is a peek at what your 2 to 3 body paragraphs are going to be about. So we know they're going to focus on repetition, sentence length, antimetable. Your third sentence is your purpose sentence. So if you already wrote down the SOAPs or you just have them in your head, you're just recapping what the purpose of this entire speech is. So it's in order to get them involved and excited about public service. And then lastly, the blue is very important. So it's the tone of who the audience is and the tone the speaker is giving off to that audience. So in this case, given the language of the speech, President JFK's encouraging tone, so the tone is encouraging, will likely inspire the young generation to look inward and pursue civic engagement, blah, blah, blah. So first sentence, recap. Second sentence, what rhetorical strategies you're going to end up talking about. Third is the purpose of the speech. And the fourth sentence is the audience and the tone the speech gives off to that audience. So in the case of here, the tone that JFK is talking to young people to get them involved is obviously going to be encouraging. When we were talking about Malcolm X, he was ridiculing. So take in who the audience is and how that speaker is trying to relate to that audience, what the overall tone is. So for that case, make sure you have those tone words readily available on testing. That's something you should definitely be looking at. You don't need to have those tone words memorized at this point, but have that tone paper out. All right, so next is your body paragraph. So again, you're going to repeat these 2 to 3 times. So you're going to have your intro paragraph, your rhetorical précis, and then you're going to repeat this body paragraph 2 to 3 times, depending on your time constraint. So ideally 3 times. So ideally 1 body paragraph about the beginning of the speech, 1 body paragraph about the middle of the speech, and 1 body paragraph about the end of the speech. So this is the analysis part. This is really where they're starting to grade you. So your first sentence is where you explain the main idea of the paragraph, or main idea of the beginning, surrounding the direct quote. So just like in yellow here, the body paragraph and the intro are very similar. Just like in the yellow here, when you're talking about the overall speech, here you're talking about the overall beginning, or the overall middle, or the overall end. So you're just getting a little bit more succinct. Then you bring in the specific strategy and direct quote. So just like here, you're bringing in the specific strategy and the direct quote of all 3 of them. Here, you're just bringing in the one that you already talked about. So for example, you talk about repetition of the phrase. So here on the rhetorical précis, you're talking about all 3. Now you're just talking about this first one, repetition of the phrase. Then, why did the speaker use the strategy? What's the purpose of the strategy? Just like here, what's the purpose of the speech overall? What's the purpose of the strategy? And then lastly, how does this quote make the audience feel? Is what you're answering for the third one. This essentially is, how does this speech make the audience feel? Make sense? See how this, if you can memorize this, and you can memorize this, it really goes smoothly. So your first sentence is main idea. Your second sentence is strategy and direct quote. Your third sentence is purpose. And your fourth sentence is, how does it make the audience feel? In the case of rhetorical précis, that'd be the essay as a whole. In the case of a body paragraph, that'd be a specific area, beginning, middle, or end of the text. So far, so good? Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
lastly, conclusion. Conclusion is a quick recap. I gave you to work on this week one of the AP YouTube conclusion videos. They're not really focusing too much on the conclusion. Just a recap.
Miss,
Yes.
the conclusion, when I was writing, it was kind of unclear how to do it.
Okay. From the videos, or just you were struggling from yourself?
The,
Did you watch
the slide.
Okay.
I was trying to follow what the slide was telling me to do, but it was kind of.
Okay, you can follow this slide, and then I gave you the video from AP YouTube. I think they went over it really well, of how to go through a conclusion and what the reader or the grader is looking for. So just essentially, I'm looking for 2 to 3 sentences recap. So why is JFK's message, so in this case, the message of telling steel executives to decrease their prices, why is that so important? And then who does it matter to? Why? Who does this the message of decreasing steel prices matter to? So we can talk about this whole group right now. So people have already written their conclusions or want to talk about conclusions. So why is this message so important? The so what? So why is why is JFK's message to the American people, to the steel executives, important? So now I'm asking. You can unmute yourselves if you have an idea. Why is this message to steal executives important?
Sorry. It's important because it's affecting the American people.
Yeah. And then so this message is important because what happens, so before even you get to that, what happens if they do not if they don't lower their prices? I think it was Shania, you were talking about this concept of a domino effect.
Yeah.
With one of those other articles. So yeah, so why is this message important? The domino effect of what would happen. And then to whom does this message matter? So who cares about this domino effect?
The steel company and the American people, because it's going to affect them.
Exactly. Who cares about the American people? He's talking to the American people as a whole. This would affect everyone. So why is this important? Because of that domino effect. And then to whom does this message matter? Everyone. American people. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. So if you answer those in about 2 to 3 sentences, you hit it. You hit the mark. Does that answer your question? Okay, so this goes through what I was planning on going over today. Is there any questions on what I went over? I know I went through it quickly, but I'm also recording this, so you can go back to this, watch it, pause when you need to. I'm gonna post this in Google Classroom about right now, right after this. Is there any questions on what I went over today? So we went over even from the beginning, exam clarifications. We went over current events. We went over how to write the essay. Any questions? This all kind of was a review, but I just wanted to hop on, see you guys, talk to you guys, see if you had any specific questions. Any questions besides that for me?
No.
Nicole, I know you had a question about making sure to sign up for the exam. Did everyone else on here sign up for the exam?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any no's?
So we all already signed up. So right?
Yes, you've already signed up. I don't know if you remember. It was early in the year.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But so what is it that we have to do now?
Okay, so all you need to do is when you originally signed up, you were taking it in school May 13th. Now you're taking it at home May 20th. So you need to tell AP Central, tell College Board that you are taking that exam. Deja actually was helping me out. Shout out to Deja today, this week, for helping me out, sending me a lot of those emails because I can only see the teacher view. Nicole, I will email you right after this what the page should look like for everything to claim those. And then if you have questions from there, we can always hop on another Zoom. I'm actually going to start this, well, I guess next week now, just having office hours online. So if you want to start to share your screen and go through essays, I can go through that a lot easier. So office hours of just me editing essays, not really me going, I can go over these more in detail for what you need to work on, but just office hours of me editing essays. So you have not just me writing things on Google Docs, but just me talking through things. So if that, so be on the lookout for another Google survey for a good time for everyone to go to office hours. So office hours aren't going to be mandatory, but if you want me to look through an essay, I will plan to do about an hour a week. Is there any other questions on the exam?
So at the end of the grading period, it's still like the test and our class grade are two separate things?
Yes. All right. So another good question. You do not get your grade back for this exam until July. So it takes a long time for the readers to grade your exam. So you won't get your grade back until July. I'll be reaching out in July when those come out. But just as long as you have your College Board login, you'll be able to log in come July. Last year, I want to say it was around July 7th, so early July, beginning week of July. Again, with all this happening, I don't know if that's going to be longer or maybe even shorter since it's online now. But yeah, around July 7th, you'll get it. So that won't be included in your grade. I am if you haven't noticed, I am trying to be pretty lenient in putting grades. I know that this is a hard time for a lot of people, and then people are you're working, trying to put in that time, taking care of loved ones. But just try to make sure you get all those done. Because remember, this is 3 college credits. So this could be saving you about $1,500 down the line if you put in the time now. Just to put that into monetary wise. Does that make sense? Anything else? Any other questions? I'm here for all your questions now. At this point, if you don't have any more questions, you feel free to hop off. But if you have questions, I will be here for another 5 minutes. It hasn't kicked us off for some reason. I thought it was going to kick us off at 40 minutes. I'm going to stop the video right now, though. So